Alright guys, so I picked up a 1970 Midway Invaders from outer space. It was in decent condition, did a lot of work to it. I'll try to overview everything I've done. Before I forget, I did take out the black light bulbs and I bought my own UV LED strips. There's the two strips in action. I didn't want to screw with the fluorescents. They're trying to phase them out and I don't want to have to worry about continuing to get a hold of them. So about the electrical, the relays are mostly going to be, I mean, a relay's a relay. There's not a whole lot that can go wrong with it other than it's being bad, which you can check pretty easily by sending it power when the thing is off, so you don't interfere with anything. The difficult part about this is that every single circuit feeds off of every other circuit and they intermingle in lots of different ways. Most of these relays, the contacts are fed from other relays, and so they all piggyback off of each other. You know, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circuits with that relay. Some of them are momentary, some of them stay on. They're momentary because they're fed by another relay. Quick word about the transformer. This is your common or neutral, or like some people might like to say, but is semantically incorrect, ground. So if you're checking, let's say you're checking your 50 amp circuit here with your meter. You've got one lead on the 50 amp hot, and then you've got your other lead on this guy right here, which is common. 6 volts, you go from here to here, and you should see 6 volts. And then of course you can check them up here, but the fuse side is the exact same thing. Quick word about, where's my control module? I'll show you all the control. Here it is. The one big thing that I couldn't get working on this thing was the left and right course. That control module controls this arm. This arm controls, it tells the machine, okay, I'm in this position. You know, my gun is shooting there, and so when the invader is over there, that's when it knows you've hit it. So obviously it's a pretty important piece. I recapped this control module. 3 of the diodes were bad. I replaced those diodes. Still didn't work. My left and right did not work. It kind of barely worked, but it would just kind of peter. It wouldn't really do anything. And one of the resistors values was slightly off. I replaced that. Still didn't work. Last resort, replace both of they're not exactly transistors, but they're pretty much transistors. Replace both of these transistors, still nothing. So rather than, I checked the value of these resistors, they're all good. Rather than continuing to mess with this thing, yeah, if you can do the electronics, it's good, but you don't want to just get too buried into it. And you might save yourself some future trouble. If you can make a nice circuit, if you can bypass something and make it nice, I'm all about that. Some people might disagree, but I got the thing running and now I can move on to other projects. So luckily, what I did, I rewired this motor to get this guy working. These are constant. This is a 50 volt circuit. I'm pretty sure these are constant hots. And then these 2 wires are your switched wires, switched ground or neutral. So what I did, the motor, you can't really see it. The motor that controls your cannon from this guy is up there. And I piggybacked off of that motor. So those 2 motors, when you moved right, one of those motors ground turned on. When you move left, the other motor's ground, I think it was ground, turned on. So I took those two switched wires and I brought them to my two motors. And I lucked out. I thought I was gonna have to have another circuit in here that regulated. So now I've told these motors when to move, when I move this way and I move this way, but they were gonna be out of sync with my, in other words, if my cannon moved slowly like this and this thing just shot over here, then I would have been out of luck. It just would have sucked. Luckily, and I think it was just a miracle that it happened this way, luckily they're actually really, really close to being in sync. So when you move this stick and it turns those motors on and you move this guy all the way to the end, your cannon is actually pretty close to at the very end. You move back all the way this way, your cannon goes all the way this way. So they're actually synced up really nicely. Of course, to not blow a fuse, so that the cannon will normally just keep going further and further, even though this thing stops. So if you were to hold this down and keep holding down, you'd blow a fuse because you've reached the end of your travel. So what I did is at the end of the travel, contacting this bracket here, I've got a normally closed switch. Normally closed, when this is at the end of its travel, now the circuit's open, now it's dead. I can still move that way, but when I move that way far enough, got another one. It kills the circuit. And these switches do not kill these motors directly. These switches are ahead of or in front of the cannon motor. So when I'm moving my cannon motor this way, this guy goes here, the circuit's dead. My cannon motor is dead too, because it was before the cannon motor and this guy. So when this guy stops, so does my cannon motor. So it works out really well. The two stay in sync pretty well. So I don't know how often or how common this problem is, but that's how I got around it. Let's see what else. Another important thing that I had to do, and I would highly recommend changing the caps on this. I haven't done it yet, I probably will. I know on this, I ended up finding one value, I think it was this one, that I couldn't find the exact cap value for. This is just gonna be a lot of work, but I'll probably do it. If you're having trouble with your sounds, like mine don't sound the best, recap these things. They're way over their life. And some of my sounds weren't working, and then they were working, or then they weren't. And I actually, on one of my sounds, I think it was pretty much all the way off. These are little potentiometers. With this thing, it came with some old ass paperwork. I've got it. So I will scan them in and I'll leave a link in the description for you guys. But it explains which pot goes to which sound. So if you're messing with your sounds, these pots, be careful with them. But yeah, I would highly recommend recapping it. That's pretty much what everybody does, is they just recap stuff. Not entirely sure what this switch is for. Saucer target service switch, I think it's talking about these guys. But this switch, I saw it in the wiring diagram somewhere, and again, I'll give you guys a link to the wiring diagram if you haven't found it already. It's on, I think, the Internet Archive. But my switch actually, with this thing in that position, your saucer circuit doesn't do anything. Switch has to be that way. And my switch was kind of actually going bad, so I just had to wire the contacts directly together. And these things were not really working well. These little guys here, these are your Invaders. For some reason, one of my Invaders was working and the others weren't. The relays were working, but it would get to there and it hit a rough spot and it would stop. So I lubed the heck out of this mechanical stuff, moving stuff. Did absolutely nothing. I even lubed the side rails of this guy. Had absolutely zero effect. And I finally realized that, get a better view. There's that little sprocket there. When this guy turns on, the sprocket starts moving and then it engages into these holes, into these grooves. Somewhere in the middle of the travel, they were all getting stuck here. And I have to gently assist them and push them with my finger and then continue to go all the way forward. For some reason on 3 of these things, from teeth 8 to 11 on all 3, the space between these grooves and the teeth on the sprocket was a lot less space. So it got really tight there. So I actually, if you can see those rough grooves there, I actually ground those down with a little tiny bit from a Dremel. And I just opened those up and deepened them a little bit bigger. And I mean, they work great now. I haven't had any problems with them. I have no idea why that on 3 of them, it's like these little shafts were like slightly bent or something. I don't know. It's really confusing. I don't care really to keep wondering why, but it worked for me. It was a good solution, and I don't have any problems with these things slipping or anything. They just work fine now. So it's crazy, but that's what I had to do. And on this thing sat up in a barn for a while, or a storage building. I can't remember. Yeah, it was the motor up front. The motor behind this glass, when you take the glass out, and let me show you real quick. I pried this little piece of trim off to get the glass out, but I was an idiot. That's not the right way to do it. You've got these tabs here, and these aluminum tabs pull out, one on that side. So the motor in here, my Canon wasn't working well. It was getting power. I actually took some great stuff. I'm sure WD-40 would have worked. But because they had been stationary for so long, I had to lube up the motors. You know, there's tons of gears back there, you'll see them. And I had to by hand, kind of, as I was saying go left, turning those. I was just trying to gently ease them to get where, you know, they were receiving power, but they were having trouble. They had sat for so long. So I kind of just coaxed them left and right and with some lube, and now it's working great. Oh, what else? Oh, these are really important. You've got a huge set of contacts on a disc on this side, and another huge set of contacts on that side. Those are really important. You'll see those in the wiring diagram, and it took me forever to actually find out where they were. I saw big stuff like this, but I totally missed that because it was on these counters. But those are really important, just FYI, so you can know where they are. But yeah, oh, back side of the glass, this stuff. It was doing pretty well. Some of it was peeling, mostly in front of the lights where the heat had gotten to it. You can kind of see, if I can focus, you can see the film there from it. But I took the glass off and I sprayed the backside to kind of lock it all in with this stuff. This is basically acrylic, which is UV resistant, unlike a lot of other polys. And it locked it all in place. I've known about this stuff. A guy who restores pinball machines for a living was a big fan of this stuff, and I was reading about it there. So they have, Krylon has another one called UV resistant acrylic or something like that. This is the same stuff. It's just their thicker formula of it, and they just call it clear glaze. So I sprayed the heck out of that, and then you can see the sheen on it. I had some chipping paint, so I wanted to lock all that down, and then for babies putting their hands on it and such, I wanted to make sure that it was all protected. So if you have peeling paint, highly recommend. But yeah, I didn't explain these spacers. I think that's the last thing to explain. So when I first got this thing, on the back side of every one of these was what looked to me like a bunch of gunk. There it is. I don't know what it is. I don't know why it was there, but it kind of seems like it was actually serving a purpose. It's hard to believe that this came from the factory, but I peeled it off, and these things will not work if you let them go all the way to the metal. They need to be further forward. So that crap that I peeled off actually serves some purpose. Let me know in the comments what yours looks like, but yeah, that's what mine looked like. So I added some spacers. This is 1/4" plywood. This one needed a little bit more space. There's a permanent solution coming soon. But yeah, so you need spacers if you have this problem with this stuff and you did like me and peeled it off, or if you don't have anything there, or if your stuff there is coming off, yes, you need spacers. Another tip when you're working on these things, if you have to do what I was doing to them, there's another example. You can see where I ground down some of those teeth. When you try to pull this thing out, it just goes forward and it hits this thing. This thing is really, really thin, really old, really cracky plastic. It'll crack really easily. There's really no room up front to remove this thing. Of course, you take the Invader off and you get it to bare bones, but still, it hits that before you can remove it. So, easy solution. I just cut these, bent them back, and I was able to remove these things and really play with them and do whatever I wanted with them. And then you can just bend those tabs right back. So yeah, I think that's everything. Like I said, the electrical can get kind of daunting. I'm pretty confident with electrical, but this stuff was just really a pain for me because every circuit feeds off of every other circuit. So study the wiring diagram really well, tinker around, see what you can do with it. Like I said, as far as the relays go, you should be pretty good. And then I haven't had a problem with the contacts on all these wheels, like those up there. Some people have had trouble with those. I think you can find some more info about those. There's a lot of electromagnetic games that use those, and maybe pinball machines use those too, I'm not sure. But anyway, yeah, she's looking pretty good. I'll have a gameplay video that you can watch, and just leave me any comments if you have any trouble or have any questions. Maybe I've been there, maybe I can help you out a little bit. Thanks for watching.